When talking about transit expansion, we far too often don't appreciate the parts that aren't visible on maps. New lines and new trains are awesome, but only as awesome as the transit system they're connected to or operating on. As transit systems age, they need to expand in depth, not just in breadth, which is a problem we face a lot in parts of the world where extending infrastructure is more interesting than making the existing infrastructure better. Big ribbons to cut and all. This is why one city's invisible transit expansion is so exciting and probably one of the largest in North America. Let's take a look. So what is an invisible transit expansion? Well, for me, invisible in the most technically pretentious way conceivable basically describes something that upgrades capacity or infrastructure in a not super visible or preparatory way. Station expansions and the like are great, but I'd argue their construction usually doesn't affect the service offering and often doesn't have too much of an immediate effect. That is, unless you put them off for far too long. Basically, what I'm saying is we far too often reward politicians, planners, and the like for building new things, but dismiss improving what we already have, be it through resiliency improvements, capacity upgrades, or other expansion projects. And I think referring to such projects as expansion is totally fair. You're expanding the usefulness and the capacity of your transit system. That is an expansion, just a different type of expansion than we usually talk about, which is sort of the point of this video. I think it's a common feeling to love new parts of a transit system and to be more neutral on older parts. For example, me with the Toronto subway. I do love the newer TYSSC stations and in fact even some of the upgraded stations on older portions of the network. But the old stations, most of them, they're pretty meh in my opinion. And I imagine this would be even worse if I was in a place where old stations are in even worse condition. The thing is though, upgrading what you already have can be amazing because you're taking infrastructure that's probably already super heavily used and combining that heavy use with finishes and quality and design that you would get in a brand new station. As it turns out, a really well upgraded station can be basically indiscernible from a brand new one. And while this stuff isn't super exciting if you're, say, Shanghai and most of your lines were built relatively recently, if you're New York or Toronto or London or Tokyo or Paris, upgrading your old infrastructure could be a real game changer because lines that were constructed decades ago can suddenly feel brand new. Upgrading old stations and infrastructure to modern standards is a real game changer. As it turns out, the Vancouver SkyTrain, as with many things, is a fantastic example of this. And I'm being completely honest here. Vancouver's not only growing the SkyTrain network, but it's been investing in the existing network, improving it year over year with indirectly noticeable improvements that make life better for everyone. And this campaign of consistent improvement, well, it should really act as an inspiration for other transit networks, not just in North America, but around the world, especially older ones. Truth be told, for most systems, there will be a point in their development where the need for expansion becomes less drastic. It's something we see in a lot of systems in Asia and Europe, for example. Sure, more people could always be served by faster, more frequent, and more all-encompassing tram, train, and bus routes, but at some point the cost-benefit of adding tons of new infrastructure just gets lower and lower and lower, to the point where you don't really need to build new train lines. This is even more true when you have a lot of people walking and cycling already, because there's just not a ton of new people to move onto transit, especially if your population isn't growing. Systems in positions like this should see it as a blessing. Instead of having to waste all your money digging tunnels, you can spend it making stations and infrastructure better and more pleasant for riders. Truly a real-life case of quality over quantity. This is the time to invest in better station finishes and designs, platform screen doors, and better passenger communication technology. Basically, at some point, if your transit system is good enough, you can kind of justify gold plating it. Now, SkyTrain has actually done this while still expanding. In the last 10 years or so, we've seen massive station reconstructions at Metrotown, Main Street Science World, and Joyce Collingwood. We've seen beautiful new bike parkades installed at a ton of different stations, and even whole new platforms to add capacity at stations like Commercial Broadway. Both the yards serving the Evergreen Extension and the Canada Line have also been expanded to allow for more trains and higher frequencies. There have also been massive upgrades to things like power systems and train control, particularly after a bout of problems with train reliability in the 2010s, but we're beyond that at this point. We've also seen the installation of some of the best next train arrival screens in the world, and that's a really cool thing to be able to say about a city in North America. And yeah, next train arrival screens, those are one of those things that you can put a lot of effort into when you have the resources. Now, as you probably know, Vancouver is undergoing a significant transit expansion of the traditional kind with the Broadway subway and Surrey Langley SkyTrain extensions, which will expand the network by more than 25% and push it over 100 kilometers in length. To prepare for this and natural future extensions, TransLink is really reinvesting in the basics. And to be honest, I'm almost as excited for these kind of basic infrastructure upgrades as the extensions, because they will change the network for everyone. For one, the system is going to see new trains. They're going to look a lot like the existing Mark IIIs, but with a lot of smart improvements. A slicker look, better interiors, and they'll be 5 cars long, creating the largest trains on the SkyTrain network. In fact, the trains are so large that platform expansions will be needed at a number of stations to accommodate their extra length. At the same time, major stations are being upgraded to handle all of the new passengers that will be carried by those trains. Burrard Station in downtown Vancouver, which is one of the busiest stations on the Expo line, is going through a major expansion program that's going to double the number of escalators and elevators in the station and reorganize the head house to provide better access to connecting buses and the local street grid. This project is literally what I'm talking about when it comes to station rebuilds. Burrard Station is cool and it's big, but it's kind of a little icky. This upgrade is going to mean new, better, more reliable elevators and escalators, better finishes, a new beautiful head house and plaza, and just technology upgrades across the board. It's going to take an old station and make it feel like it's brand new, which is fantastic for one of the most used stations on the system. It shouldn't just be new riders who benefit, existing riders should see the benefits of transit expansion too, and investing in the existing system is how you do that. There's also a brand new station being built in Richmond at Capstan Way, which I talked about in a video up here, but which didn't actually start construction by that point, so yeah, more of a location shot type of thing. Anyways though, Capstan Way is a really cool new Canada Line station. It has a cool modern design that is a little unconventional for SkyTrain, and I like that. A lot of the stations look the same, and they have a good design, but I think something a little different is cool. To be fair, the station adds no new track to the network, so I thought it was acceptable to bring up here. And while it is a Canada Line station, so it's not massive, it's going to be really nice. The platforms are going to be 50 meters from day one, meaning that the expansion that a lot of other stations will need to go to 3-car trains, that's just built into the station, and there'll be up and down escalators for both platforms, which is sort of the new standard for SkyTrain. Basically, it's a really good project, and I'm excited for more and better access to that part of North Richmond. At the same time, the SkyTrain network is massively expanding its maintenance and operations space for all of those new trains, which will mean the fleet expands even as the original Mark I trains are retired. One of the new operations and maintenance facilities will be at the south end of the Surrey Langley line, and that will mean that the Surrey Langley line kind of can maintain and operate its own trains. And that provides some redundancy if there's ever issues with the Skybridge, which has also seen upgrades in the past couple months. The Operations and Maintenance Center will be built around the south end of the Surrey Langley line, probably in Langley, which is actually where I'm from, and will not only mean more room for fleet expansion in the future, because Surrey and Langley are a lot less dense than a lot of the other areas the SkyTrain network travels through, but it'll also mean way less deadheading, where trains going out of service all the way out in Langley need to travel all the way back north of the Fraser for maintenance and storage. Another new yard that's a bit further along, known as OMC4, is being built south of Lougheed Town Centre Station. This is the most modern and sort of world standard SkyTrain operations facility I've seen on the network, and it's going to be kind of unique because it will be connected by an elevated guideway to the Expo Line tracks just south of Lougheed Town Centre. That new location is going to be fantastic. It provides really good access to the Expo Line, but also to the Millennium Line via the track connections to the north. New yards are really critical because they mean more space for maintenance and cleaning, so cleaner, more reliable trains, and more room for storage, which means more trains and more frequency. Perhaps even more interesting for you tech enthusiasts out there, the SkyTrain network will be getting a new data center, operations center, and communications building, which will be built adjacent to the original operations and maintenance center on the SkyTrain network and will feature a data center and a massive new control room. This control room will feature equipment for monitoring the SkyTrain network and running the automated train service, as well as room to grow with future system expansion, which had left the original operations and maintenance facility a little outgunned. The impact on riders of all of this is going to be absolutely massive. Riders will see more modern, more frequent and larger, more comfortable trains, New upgrades to stations and new stations entirely will mean better, less congested, and shorter trips. All in all, TransLink is spending over $1 billion just to upgrade the existing network without adding a single kilometer of track, and I think that's really cool and exciting to see. The system is being invested in, so it can provide the same fantastic service it's provided for the last couple decades into the future. And all in all, should keep Vancouver as one of the best transit networks in North America, despite its relatively small size. As you can see, Vancouver is doing a lot of great stuff. And it's not just about extensions, but about making the system better for the riders of today. That said, there will also be a ton of new capacity, and given the network's success over the past 30 years, I think we'll need it. Thanks for watching.